Kevin, today we're going to talk about that very taboo subject, anabolic steroids.
Ooh.
And
kind of looking forward to this.
I'm going to give a rundown because I've got some personal insights on this, and I'll go into that. And I really want to dig into it because there's a societal misconception, right, about what it is and how it affects society, right? It's a gray area, and for me, realistically, if you look at anybody that's in either a competitive sport, whether it be amateur or professional, right? Or also if you're looking at the very competitive guys just in the gym, right? Whether it be a CrossFit gym, doesn't really matter. Every single one of them, right, to a percentile of, say, to about 80%, are using some sort of performance enhancement.
I agree with you.
Right. Because there's reasons for that. It's not a black and white thing. It's bad for you, it's good for you. It should be taken. There's so much gray area in the subject, right? So I want to dig down, and we're going to talk about where it originally comes from, my personal experience with it, and what was my causality when I was a kid, and what forced me into this, and how society actually kind of drives young men towards it.
Yeah. You know, my experience with steroids is like baseball. Having played baseball growing up and watching a lot of the big names like Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, those guys. A lot of taboo around that, but of course the bodybuilding world. I loved wrestling too. So the wrestlers, there was this what did they actually use them? It was hard to prove, etc.
There's so much on this.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And so I'm interested in this one.
It affects the US on a different level, and explain how this got to that point through Congress. But let's start with mine, right? So I'm in South Africa, right? I grow up like everybody here, right, having these images and these things thrust upon you as a child, right? Now I'm gonna name a couple of instances. Imagine as a kid, right, you watching Masters of the Universe, He-Man, right, popular 80s series.
Yep.
How does he become jacked? He has a sword, thrusts it into the air, and magically he becomes this muscular guy that, decimates everybody with his powers.
Right.
Or you have Captain America, who literally became Captain America by taking a serum, steroids. Or the Hulk, who gamma radiation, steroids. The inset of how heroes are developed.
When we say the Hulk too, right?
Right.
Yeah,
and the inset of how we're exposed to this as young men is kind of, when you think of it, like it's how do you think that everyone's not
Lou Ferrigno was my favorite.
You know what I mean, right? And even before he played it, when you're reading the comic books, right, every single hero has a special ability, and the special abilities, either if he's an X-Man, it's because he's got some genetic anomaly, or there's a serum that the government created, or he's done some sort of experiment, or fell into a radioactive fucking pool. Who fucking knows? But there's always something that takes them from the ordinary into the extraordinary. Right now, think of that as a child. You're watching these things. Yeah. Your brain is going, oh my god, this is, there's always there's this magic way to become this thing, this super extraordinary thing. So circa 90s, I'm a kid living in South Africa, staying in a small town, right? I start training at around 16 years old, right? And I trained for a solid year, just getting in the gym. And I mean, I want people to understand the dynamics that steroids aren't it's not a solvable problem. You still got to do the work. Your diet shit, you're going to be shit on it. Your training shit, you're going to be shit on it, right? So you have to look at it from that standpoint, that the guys that are on it are still working their asses off. If they look good and they perform well, they're working their asses off. Right. I'm a 16-year-old kid. I go through a full year, right? I'm reading bodybuilding magazines, so forth, and I'm starting to now speak to people in the gym, right? And as a young man, what you're doing is you're looking at people.
Really quick, what was your first exposure to it, like the gym environment? Was it like through school? Was it a local gym? Was it old school iron? Like, tell us a little bit about like your first gym.
So we stayed in a small town. So that town, we pretty much had one gym, right? It was an old school iron gym, right? It's pretty much where everyone trains. It was at that time, it was at a rugby stadium, and that's the only gym we had in town at that time.
Nice.
Now, when you go in there, obviously there's guys that are jacked,
Yeah.
And there's guys not. So you start fluctuating to the guys that you want to embody. You want to look like them.
Makes sense.
And I started making friends with them.
These are older guys?
All older guys, right? And I started making friends with them, started interacting with them, training with them. They help me as much as they can. And once you build up a little trust, and especially back in the 90s, there's no YouTube or internet or people openly, honestly speaking about these things. So the only way to gain the knowledge is to speak to someone who has gone through the experience. So you speak to these guys and you find out that the protein shakes, all the other things that you could take, which at that time were very limited, right? It's the 90s. And you figure out and you go, well, okay, so there's these things they take, these hormones, right? And the guy, I'm a 16-year-old, trained for a year, right? Now, to give context, I'm 6 foot tall, right? I was 6 foot tall when I started training, and I weighed under 100 pounds.
Wow.
Now imagine that.
Skinny.
I was skinny. I got a picture. I'll pop them up. At 16. At 16.
6 foot, 100 pounds.
Right. I just got height, and as a kid, I would eat a lot. I just couldn't gain weight.
Yeah, that's my
right.
problem
So.
Too.
Again, I was embodying and going, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude Van Damme, all the big boys and Dolph Lundgren, whoever was that heroes at the time. I want to look like them.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Those are the physiques I want to embody.
Yep.
So you go through this as a young man, and you find these people in the gym, and they explain to you that there's this magical pills and magical injections you can take, right? Which sounds very much like what Captain America did, and you know what? They're going to give you muscles. Right. So.
But did they ever say the word steroids to you?
They eventually do. So this is, again, because it's such a taboo subject, and back then, again, you got to understand the legalities, which we're going to go into. You can walk into Thailand, you can walk into a pharmacy, and you can order a bucket full of steroids. It's legal. It's not illegal. There's a reason it's illegal in the United States.
Why though?
We'll get to that later. Let's start here. I've got a whole section where I explain the legalities.
Just there's a little tangent to that. It's always blown my mind that why is it taboo for someone who's trying to basically it's a crime for someone to quote sell a supplement, a steroid? In my opinion, it's probably because it's not regulated by the government.
There are good reasons. There's also stupid reasons.
Yeah,
we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So as I'm developing this as a kid, I make these connections, right? So eventually, I get the standard stack back in the 90s, which was Dianabol, right? Nandrolone, decanandrolone, and some cypionate, testosterone. Cypionate's essentially what you use for TRT.
Just really quick for the listeners, I know nothing about steroids other than what I've recently
I'm going to explain where it comes from. I'm giving you my personal input, and then we're going to go into some depth.
Which is what makes this kind of fun, because I don't really know anything about it.
This is to give you context from a personal aspect.
Yeah.
Okay. So I go through this entire process, right? I make trust. And now I get my first stack. I worked an entire summer, my ass off every day to earn the money to pay for it. I finally get the stack. I go from just under 100 pounds. I pick up 100 pounds.
Damn.
100 pounds in around 3 months.
3 months?
3 months.
So that had to be a growth spurt plus weight.
No height. I'm the same height. So nothing to do with height. This is literally just muscle gain. So if I look back on it, I was definitely lacking in something, right? But in context now, so as a young man, a skinny kid, I'm embodying these people. Now I find this thing that I take, and it just all of a sudden, overnight, 3 months, I get back to my senior year of high school. I'm the most jacked guy in school.
That was your Captain America formula.
That's your Captain America formula. Yeah. So there are dangers to it, but we're going to go through it systematically. From my personal experiences, I went from being an insecure, skinny kid to all of a sudden being this jacked individual where I all of a sudden now I can compete in bodybuilding, strongman, powerlifting. I'm super strong. There's so many things that it gave me on a good level, right? I need people to understand, because you've got to see it from the perspective of the person who's doing it. Let's compare this to our current state, right? The woke mob will tell you, I've got 2 children, right? Here's a 16-year-old girl who says she feels like a boy. They will take this girl, they will mutilate her body, right? Because she's got gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
They'll mutilate her body, right? But there's nothing you can do. Once it's mutilated, there's no coming back from it, right? You can't. Detransitioning is an extremely entire process that doesn't really work.
It's a really, really bad thing.
If you cut your breasts off, it's permanent damage. If you as a young girl start taking testosterone, it's permanent damage.
Yeah, like this is a rabbit hole we can go down in another episode, but I just feel so strongly against this because 100%. To me, it's just one of the worst things anybody could do.
Agreed.
Health-wise, mental health-wise, physically.
100%.
Awful thing.
Okay, now we have the 16-year-old kid, right? It's a boy who's just trying to keep up with his peers. Whatever the reason is, he feels like muscle and strength, which is very important for males, is going to give him this. You're going to give him a boost in his testosterone, which is going to give him a boost in muscle growth and help him with his body dysmorphia. However, it's 100% reversible. At that particular stage in the right dosages, there's nothing but positive effects for that child. I'm that child.
Yeah.
And could change their life. It changed my life.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So, to be clear, there's certain aspects we've got to take into consideration, but from a psychological standpoint, the one up until recently we were fine with as a society, but somehow this one was wrong. Think about that on a very deep level.
Fucked up.
Right. So now,
really quick sidebar to what you're saying, because I can relate to exactly what you're saying with the size thing, and my son's going to go through this because you've seen him. He's a tiny kid. Yeah. I grew up that way too, and then from 15 to 16, I hit a growth spurt. I grew like 8 inches in one summer. I put on like 50 pounds. Now my way of putting the weight out was just through height. It wasn't really through the gym and what you did. But what I know is that like I got picked on a lot when I was real small like that. When I put the size on, everything changed. Yeah. Everything for me changed. Like people started to see like, holy crap.
They look at you differently. They treat you differently.
They treat me differently. And I even ran it because I had changed schools, and I even ran into somebody years later when I was a senior in high school. They hadn't seen me since I was a little guy. And now him and I are looking eye to eye, and he's like, holy shit, what happened to you?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, time changes.
These are the things, right?
Right.
So now I'm 60. Now, again, for anyone watching, I don't recommend that any child, right? If you're an adult, make your own decisions, but no child should take it, right? I'm talking from a perspective, I've done it. There's nothing I can do about it. It's happened. I then go through the next 5 years, right? My brain is now I'm focused. I didn't want to do anything else other than bodybuilding, strongman, or powerlifting. Those were the things I was geared in on, right? So now what happens is I go through this 5-year period where I take whatever I can in whatever dosages, whatever everyone tells me you can, whatever I can afford to try and pack on as much muscle and strength as I possibly can. Through this process, I realized by taking that much that I honestly, when you take a lot of anything, and this isn't just a steroid thing, this is of anything. Too much of something is never good. So very early on, I realized that for me personally, less was more. So I when someone used to take me to say it's take 500 milligrams a week, I'd like, okay, I'll take 100. Only realizing now that I understand the dosages and the science behind it more, that I was taking the minimal amounts within those compounds. Now that entire process I went through, I went through a process of then trying to go into the WWE where I had to be steroid free, right? There's testing process that I learned how to get off it. I learned that it's not as much a performance enhancer as a recovery enhancer. Right. There isn't a performance, but the performance doesn't come from the steroid.
That's why baseball guys took it.
Yeah.
You think baseball, you play 165 games a year.
There you go.
In like 168 days or something crazy like that. Very little days off. Their literally bodies are always hurting. They're always physically ailing. So steroids helps them recover. It's the recovery that really makes the difference because your body is already geared to grow muscle. And I experienced in college, like, and obviously I'm not going to name a name because we haven't talked whether or not it's open book for them, but like I knew guys that did it. And while we're all hurting and suffering through going natural, these guys are bouncing back every day with all kinds of energy and all kinds of just like recovery. Yeah, I mean, you saw it in the strength in the gym, like they were definitely stronger. Yeah. But they were recovering. But here's faster. The thing is, why are they stronger? Right. So I don't know. The process is when you go into a gym or when you enact any type of activity that puts your muscle under strain, it essentially what it does is it creates micro tears in the muscle. When your muscle recovers, it recovers with growth. Now,
if you do this, right, with low testosterone, that recovery process takes longer. If you can shorten the recovery process, it means that the ability to pack on muscle, that's where the growth comes from. It's the recovery that really makes the difference. So, you know, the idea is the guys that you see are super big, trust me, they eat to be that big.
Yeah, of course.
Right? That eats a ton of food.
Of course.
They train really hard and they tear their muscles apart in every workout.
Right.
And then they take the gear, which helps them recover,
Yeah.
enabling that growth that they need.
Yeah.
Right. And some people are more genetically in line for growth. A guy like Ronnie Coleman. Ronnie Coleman never ever took a steroid. He did two Olympias, not Mr. He hadn't won the Olympia yet, but he competed in 2 Olympias, natural.
That's crazy.
Now, Ronnie Coleman is the 1% of the 1% of the 1%.
Right.
He is not the normal human being. So there are people in our society, right, that do embody that. However, for him to go from a competitor competing in the Mr. Olympia and coming 13th, 14th, 15th, which 15th in the world. So he's fucking phenomenal.
Right.
However, in order to win, he needed the edge, which everybody else was taking. And was my experience. So as I went through, I got a lot of...
Did he win natural?
No,
he never won natural.
He never won natural. Okay. But he competed in 2 Olympias.
Natural,
which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right. So now what you've got to do is...
how many guys at his weight class went into the Olympia, just for perspective?
So on those, generally in the Olympia, you can have anything from 15 to 25 competitors.
Okay.
Yeah, right, but those are the 15 to 25 best on Earth.
Top in the world, yeah.
Right, so it's phenomenal.
The fact that he did that natural.
But he is not the norm. Right. So, and most people are not the norm. There are these genetic freaks in society. They do exist. But like I say, they are the 1% of the 1%.
Right.
They're a very low anomaly. Right. So as I grew, right, and started investing in sports, I realized that no matter which sport I was introduced to or people that competed in the sports, right, whether it be athletics, rugby, football, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Everybody is trying to get some sort of enhancements on performance, whether that be through supplementation, diet, it doesn't really matter, but everybody is thinking about it.
Sure.
From the professional athlete to the high school football star, right, to the guy in the gym who just wants to pack on a few pounds of muscle.
Right.
And you have to compare it and look at it, which we're going to do in the next segment, where I'm going to explain to you the side effects and then compare it to side effects of things like vitamin C and show you what it really does so people can have a contextual idea of what it is. My personal opinion is, despite what I went through and despite my positive effects from it, I think any child should not be exposed to that until they're of age. Right. If you look at the military, so the military has standards on taking testosterone or steroids. If you take steroids in the military, they'll kick you out.
Yeah.
It's the dumbest thing I have ever heard of.
Yeah.
The military should be testing every 3 months every single soldier's testosterone levels.
I think I've heard, at least, I thought that there were team guys that were taking roids. Like, I don't know.
They were, but they've essentially started cracking down on it.
Yeah, okay.
Right, but the crackdown on it is more to do with control and misconceptions.
But if you think about, like, Hitler with the Blitzkrieg stuff, like, he was loading them dudes up on the meth. I think, was it meth?
Well, it's interesting.
I think it was meth.
It's interesting you bring that up because that takes us straight to the next chat.
Yeah, but that's what allowed them to just go right through and never stop fighting because they were literally getting loaded up.
So this is where the interesting part comes from. So now talking about journey in World War II, that is the beginning of where steroids came from. Right, so back in the 1930s, the German scientists cooked up testosterone in an artificial form for the first time. There you go. I'm gonna look this up because I'm curious. Right, I got all the stats in front of me.
I'm interested in the Blitzkrieg thing though.
That's 100%. So what he did is he experimented with multiple drugs, including methamphetamines, to try and keep the guys as awake as possible in the field.
Right.
One of the side effects of the methamphetamine is why the Nazis were so ruthlessly aggressive, was because they were hopped up on meth.
Yeah.
So you're 100% correct. This has been covered in a couple of different places, but that was the standpoint. They were testing it. If you watch the World War II, not the World War II, the Olympics.
Time magazine, methamphetamine became part of the Nazi military strategy.
Yes. Right, and interesting enough is if you watch, there's a during World War II, the Olympics were held in Germany, right? Mm-hmm. During that Olympics, you look at Hitler and you see him standing there, he's hopped up on meth. Completely.
Oh, sure.
Right, because they didn't understand the fundamentals of it. They just saw it as a way of keep a soldier awake, keep him fight ready and keep him going. Not unlike what they do in parts of Africa with children, right? So they'll kidnap children from villages, they'll hop them up on drugs, methamphetamines, and they send them out to war.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. It says drugs in Nazi Germany, methamphetamine was the privileged exception.
Yes.
Well, other drugs were banned, basically, but methamphetamine was respected, basically, because it was meant for soldiers for killing.
And as much as we judge them at the same time, there was cocaine in Coca-Cola, so so
which is crazy.
So Germany starts experimenting with testosterone, right? Mm-hmm. By 1935, they're testing it for muscle loss, depression. They're applying it in so many different test funds. Then what happens is we fast forward all the way to the 50s, right? World War II's over. Russians start realizing, based on the fact that a lot of German scientists, they went to Russia, and some German scientists came to the United States. And then they picked up on this, and they started developing their own program. And then they started kicking the US's ass in weightlifting. And then there was a
These
guy...
are the Russians.
These are the Russians, right? And then there was a US doctor called Dr. John Ziegler, right? And he teamed up with Cyber Pharmaceuticals.
That sounds familiar.
Right. And what they did is they developed Dynable, right? Which is a synthetic form of testosterone. Delivery system is slightly different, and this was developed in 1958. Now, from 1958 all the way through to the early 90s, you could walk into a pharmacy anywhere in the United States, and you could walk in and you could get your doctor to give you a script for anything you wanted. Hulk Hogan talks about in the 80s how he'd just go to his doctor and prescribe whatever he wants. There you go. Because it wasn't seen as something that's bad. There was nothing that was bad about it at the time.
So, hey doc, give me some steroids.
I feel like I need to gain a little bit of muscle. Don't worry, here's some Dynabols, here's some Nandrolone, here's some Cyclonate. There you go. Right. Super easy, super go. Right. That was that time frame.
Yeah.
That's all the way from the 50s, right? So this is through circa the golden era of bodybuilding, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all those guys, right? All the way through, right?
So they got all their stuff through a doctor, basically.
Doctor, yeah. You, up until the early 90s, you just get it from your doctor. Then what happens is we hit the 1988 Olympics.
Okay.
Right. Ben Johnson competes in the sprints, and they find out that he used a stanozol winstrol as a drug, which is basically a combination, a testosterone derivative.
Performance enhancer.
Right? It's a performance enhancer. He gets kicked out. It's a big...
Was this the whole, like, he had to pee and...
So what happens is they started in, I think it was in 87, they started proposing unfair advantages within the sport and realized that there's certain things you can take that will give you performance enhancement.
Then they strip him of his gold medal.
Right. They strip him of his gold medal, and they give it to the second runner-up, which was Carl Lewis.
Yeah.
Interesting fact. So Carl Lewis at the time, the entire US team was an ephedrine, right? Which is
That's an upper, right?
That's a performance enhancer.
Yeah.
Right. It's not steroids, but it's a performance enhancer. 100% legal in the Olympics today. So when you think
ephedra is essentially an energy booster, isn't it?
Kind of, right? Yeah. It's one step away from it's type of amphetamine, right? They you can use ephedrine to make methamphetamines. So, but imagine this, right? So, Carl Lewis was on a performance enhancing drug that is illegal today. He's seen as a hero, while Ben Johnson, who was on Winstrol at the time, is seen as the villain. Contextually, it's bullshit, right? If you really contextually lay it out,
and it's. To this day, he still has lost that medal.
He's not like claimed it. Again, in Carl Lewis's defense, ephedrine wasn't illegal.
Right.
It was legal in the sport. They didn't test for it. But if you think of the stupidity of the levels of... Right, if we're going to do sport, okay, to what level do we stop, right? Because should we ban Michael Phelps and strip him from all his medals? Because genetically, the way his feet are shaped, the way... Right, he's a freak, right? So genetically, he's a freak, and he will... decimate anybody else.
Right.
Do we strip him of his medals because he got a genetic advantage? We don't, right? Do they strip the United States for having advancements in the type of swimming trunks they use, the way they do their training, the fact that they spend millions of dollars in training their athletes versus some poor guy from Kazakhstan who has to swim in a puddle to do the same thing?
Right.
The point that I'm making is enhancement happens in many different factors.
Yeah, it does.
Right. And then what happens is after the 1988 Olympics, because of the huge fallout of what happened, Congress got together and they enacted what they call it was the Steroids Control Act, which is in right now, which then classified steroids as a Schedule 3 drug. Essentially the same as cocaine. Right. Now, they had no good information because back then, there's a couple of studies that they ran.
So what prompted it? The Olympics?
Say again?
The Olympics is what prompted them to do that?
So what happened with the Olympics is as the Olympics started progressing, they realized that certain countries were using certain performance-enhancing drugs. They're trying to level the playing field, which in itself is not a bad thing, but is a very difficult thing to kind of mitigate. So in order to even the battlefield, and as technology was coming off, they found methodologies to be able to test for certain compounds. They then isolated these compounds. The list at the time, I think there was 10 or 15 compounds on. There's over 1,000 now, right, that they can test you for. The point being is they're trying to level the playing field for the athletes competing, which I don't necessarily disagree with. I just think it's a moot point, because how do you do that? It's impossible. It's you have weight divisions for a reason. But now within that weight division, let's look at the UFC, right? We have Dricus du Plessis, who's the UFC middleweight champion, right? He walks around at 220 pounds. That's his normal weight. That's what he walks around with, right?
Big boy.
He's a big boy. He drops from 220 pounds down to 180.
For his fights.
Then he takes in liquid, and when he walks in the cage, he's probably sitting around 200 to 220. Right. But he's doing nothing illegal, because that's the current way the system sits. They allow it. So the point I'm saying and making here is these rules are put in, and I know they're meant to try and even the playing field, but some of them are just fucking stupid.
Well, to me, a lot of rules in life solve one problem but create two more.
100%.
So it's unnecessary. What are like I remember with baseball, like I mentioned Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds and them guys earlier. You talked about Michael Johnson in the '88 Olympics. I kind of remember all that. Here's my struggle with that stuff. I don't know if it's in your notes to talk about this, but with baseball, when Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire had this big home run race, I think it was 1998. Yep. Baseball had been trying to recover from a strike.
Yes.
There was a strike in the mid-90s that crushed baseball.
And they needed a hero.
Yeah. And in the mid-90s, you go to a Major League Baseball game for $1. Nobody was going to the games, and then you get in there, you get down to the front because nobody was there. And then enter Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire chasing after Roger Maris's record. And they, I think Sosa ended up admitting to steroids. I can't remember if McGwire did or not. But there's this big ordeal with all these guys that end up on Capitol Hill having to testify whether or not they did steroids.
Yeah.
But here's my thing. Major League Baseball, when they were in hurt, I don't know this is opinion, feeding these dudes steroids. Here you go, man, go ahead as many home runs as you can. We need you to do this.
Yeah.
Baseball gets back on the map. Now it's a problem.
It's always like that. It's not just a baseball thing, right?
Of course.
So this happened within the WWF, right? So in the 90s, there was a steroid scandal. Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan were having a bit of beef, right? So
I remember
they get pulled into court. This is what ruined people's hero complex, right? And then you realize that Hulk Hogan, for all his take your vitamins, wake up, go to the gym, all this thing was taken. And what they do is they try to villainize him.
Of course.
Right? Oh, how dare he do that, right? When realistically, from a societal level,
but who's he hurting? He's hurting no one but himself.
But here's the thing, right? Is from a sports context, they're trying to convince you that guy who takes steroids versus the other one. Let me just finish my point.
Go ahead.
So one guy's taking, right? We're not talking about sports entertainment. That's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
But let's talk about sports, right? So you and me want to play baseball, right? You have access to steroids and you take it. I don't. You will have an advantage over me. However, let's break it down to a different one. I suck at baseball. I'm mediocrely good and you're really good. Would the steroids really make a difference? No. I don't think it would.
You might connect on certain plays or situations that it might give you a little bit more strength or oomph, but ultimately the talent is not going to be there, so you're going to struggle.
100%. So what happens is sports have tried to develop in. So strongman, for instance, right? You look at all the strongmen out there. Now, they won't publicly admit this because when they admit this, they all of a sudden get demonized. But realistically, they don't test strongmen at all. Why don't they test them? It's a freak show.
Right. It's being strong.
It's in the fucking name. The strongest man in the world. Right. Now, when I go there, I don't want to see a guy who can just barely do what I do in the gym. I want to see a guy who's going to fucking throw a car fucking 10 feet. Right?
Totally.
There's a reason for that. So they started implementing an idea of testing. We're going to test the athletes. Then what happens is it kind of disappears because they do it for a year and then the level of competition goes
Yeah.
Right. And it's on your point. When we need the heroes, we'll feed them. So,
well, let me finish up something I was going to say. To me, here, like, you could eliminate all steroids in the world. Okay, let's quote, level the playing field. Say there's no such thing as steroids that never existed. Any true competitor or athlete is going to look for an edge to beat his competitor. It's just the reality of it.
But even besides that, even if you take, let's look at the Mr. Olympia, right? Let's take Phil Heath, who was Mr. Olympia a couple of years ago. He was 8-time Mr. Olympia, right? If I took Phil Heath and everyone who ever competed against him, and we take steroids out of the equation completely, he still wins. He wouldn't be the same size, neither would the rest of them.
Why does he still win?
Because he's still genetically superior.
Yeah.
And he still has the mindset, the heart, the drive,
which in my opinion, like, there's in every sport, whatever it may be, you have those genetic freaks that have that talent and capability just based on their, makeup and DNA.
But even one step back, right? Every sport that is competitive. Now, just competitive is enough for you to want to do it. Just being competitive, right? You got guys walking around the gym just to ensure that they can lift more than the guy next to them in the gym, where there's no trophies, there's fucking nothing for him. He'll take steroids.
Yeah.
Now put that on an athlete, where there's big contracts, there's money, there's all these things involved. Do you think he's not going to do whatever? Right. There was a study conducted, I think 10 years back. They went and asked professional athletes. They said to them, if I could give you something that would make you the absolute fucking greatest in your sport, you will be the best. But in 5 years after that, you're going to die. Would you take it?
All of them said yes.
80% said yes.
80%. I'm surprised it's only 80.
Right. It's probably more than that because others probably just like, no, but it's 80%. Because when you start becoming in competitive sports, you will die for that sport. So
you don't think about the long term.
You will do whatever you need to do.
The injuries, all that stuff, you don't care. Yeah. So
back to this. So now it becomes a taboo subject, a Schedule 3 drug in the United States. In the United States, not in the rest of the world. Right. So steroid laws in the rest of the world are very different to the US. Right. But despite that, people are still on it everywhere. Right. Now we have TRT. Right. Nice fancy name. Testosterone replacement therapy.
Yeah.
AKA steroids. Right.
Legal steroids.
Legal steroids given to you by your doctor because it's good for your health. Right. Now, when they conducted studies on steroids, right, and I pulled these stats today, and they are, honestly, does controlled use hurt? Okay, so I'm going to read this. Does it actually hurt you to take it? So let's look at the science. So, in a 2010 study, the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism gave older guys 100 to 200 milligrams of testosterone every week, standard therapy. Right, you and me would take 200 milligrams a week for standard therapy of TRT replacement, right? Strength went up, yes, but they stopped the study early. Why? More heart issues popped up in the steroid group, and a small sample of all the dudes, there was a red flag for them. Then in 1996, dialysis study had 100 milligrams of nandrolone, DECA, weekly. Muscle gains, great. There was a little bit of a tick in liver enzymes, right? Not a disaster, just a nudge. They stopped the study. Right, and I'll tell you why they stopped the study. Then they had a group of healthy guys taking an insane amount. They gave them 600 milligrams a week.
Wow.
It's way too high, right? Their HDL cholesterol dropped. Their sperm count took a hit. Not permanent, but that's what happened. Now I'm going to flip the script for you. Now we're going to compare this to daily vitamins that you take. That's right. So let's take vitamin A or D. Easy to do with supplements. Buy it in the store. And if you're looking at liver damage, kidney stones, heart rhythm issues, take too much of any of those compounds and you get the same, way worse effects. The same or way worse. Then we compound this. Now we take alcohol or McDonald's burgers.
Ooh.
And I can tell you now that the effects of those are dramatically worse than any of these studies go out. So then ask, why did you pull the studies? Right. One, they pulled the studies because from the Olympic standpoint of athletes competing each other, they wanted to take it out of society. There's an underlying reason for it. If men have low testosterone, men are controllable. Men with higher testosterone or good testosterone levels don't just follow, they don't just question. True. Let's give a good example. Mark Zuckerberg, owner of Facebook.
Yeah.
He was a pasty fucking pimple-headed freak. 5 years ago. And then he stepped onto a jiu-jitsu mat and he got jacked and he looks great and he's moving around. Now all of a sudden he doesn't talk the same, he doesn't move the same, and he doesn't take instruction the same.
Yeah.
Strong men are a threat to a government. This is why they want to keep them in certain lines, right? There is an underlying reason, right? Now, when you look through everything, they say a couple of beers a night will trash your liver over time, right? It spikes your cancer risk, fries your brain cell, and the CDC says even moderate alcohol is tied to 140,000 deaths in the US alone. And here's the reverse kicker. Show me one person that's died from steroids. Now, there'll be a couple of people who tell you that steroids was a causality for what happened to them, but if you actually dig into it, it's very much like COVID deaths.
I knew a guy, and I don't know all the details. He was one of our gym coaches at a school that I went to. He was a self-admitted steroid user, very heavily bodybuilder, all that. He died of a heart attack.
Yes.
They blamed steroids for his death.
Now, here's the thing is, how many people who have never... So what's the highest...
He was young. He was in his 30s.
Fair enough. Right. So what is the highest cause of death and mortality for males in the United States?
Heart attacks.
Okay. How many of them on steroids?
I don't know.
Almost none.
Really?
So did he die of a heart attack because he took steroids? Or would he be one of the general people who would have died of a heart attack anyway because of other underlying issues? We will never know.
Yeah.
But the data suggests...
I mean, he died a long time ago.
Right.
I mean, he'd probably be in his 60s today.
But the data suggests, right, based on the statistics, suggests that you cannot show me one person that they can show the causality was steroid use. You can show me a whole bunch of other things. You can say he took steroids, he took cocaine, he did all of these other things, right? So which one was it? You can't pin it on steroids. Then again, in the same breath, let's talk about Ozempic. Right, this wonderful drug that's killing people en masse. And
that's the weight loss pill,
That's
right?
the weight loss
drug.
That's the diabetes one that's now become an injection for weight loss. It's destroying lives, right? It's way more toxic, I'd say by the 100,000th percentile than any steroid you can take.
What I get frustrated about that, and there's other forms of this stuff out there, like it's the quote magic pill for these out of shape, overweight people.
What do you mean a magic? There's no such thing. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
You mean like the opposite one that gains muscle?
Yeah.
Except the difference is every time that you see damage, right, from steroid use, it's because it's not taken in the right dosage. It's because people get stupid, right? If an adequate dosage for an adult man over the age of 30 is 200 milligrams a month, you will get an idiot out there who goes, well, if 200 is good, 1,000 is better. It's not.
Did you ever do that when you were young? Did you ever?
I think there was one time, and there's no such thing as overdose, right? There's no such thing as overdosing, right? It's you will take that much, and there's guys who take that much, and then you will see side effects come out. You know, there's acne on the skin. Yeah. There's visible signs. There's some article where they have breast tissue that grows out of their chest. Those are all type of indicators that tell you someone's using it. What happens is if you use too much, all your body does, it just converts it to estrogen. Those side effects is the estrogen conversion.
Gotcha.
Right. There's no real benefit in using high dosages. Everybody's different, but people are people. People are stupid when it comes to baselines. Now, used in the correct way, there's nothing but positive effects from it.
Exactly.
Compared to other drugs, Ozempic being the worst on the list, and we can run down through many others, it's no worse than taking a very high-level supplement regime.
Right.
Anything you take into your body is going to have some sort of effect on how your system works.
Well, my thing is, and just know what we do in the gym and how we eat and train and all that. That is going to be an additional tool in the toolbox. And I've never done steroids personally. I've definitely want to do it. Considering
you are now.
Yeah, I am now technically with TRT.
Not technically, you literally are.
Yeah, with TRT, you're right. But my point is, that's just a tool. The work still has to be done.
Doesn't change the work.
And in the end, like you said, if I don't go, and actually my doctor told me this when I started TRT. He's like, if you take TRT and you don't eat right and you don't work out, you're not going to see any results.
Nothing good's going to happen.
Yeah, but versus if getting really dialed in and locked in, it enhances and it drives you that much more.
It's a tool as good as a good diet with no processed foods, high protein intake from meat. Yeah. Right, good supplementation. All of those things are in the same. They're the same wheelhouse. We haven't changed the game. We're just looking at different aspects. It's just one's been demonized in a way from society for multiple different reasons. And The same as marijuana has been demonized very stupidly because it's been thrown into this hole and no one really understands what it is.
Well, fitness to me, I actually texted my guy yesterday about this, the one that just has joined us recently. Time plus consistency plus patience equals compounding interest, aka 100%. Results.
Yes.
So this is what, like, again, it's a tool, but you have to put the work in. You have to be patient. You have to be consistent. You have to have discipline to do these things. And then the compounding interest is going to start to take over and accelerate your results. And the more time you put into this, the more results you're going to gain long term. You know?
And again, look at it as a tool used correctly in the right formats with blood tests, with a doctor, a good doctor who understands the mechanisms. You're going to get nothing but positive effects.
Right.
There are literally millions of men today that TRT has changed their lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Changed my life.
Now, there is a difference. You know, I'm speaking from a personal aspect of being a skinny kid and this thing changing my outlook of how I saw things. But I went through a very quick readjustment process. Of learning different methodology of what to do with it. And again, if you are not an adult, don't touch stupid shit. Right. But there is something to be said for how it's demonized. And then when we look back into our society today, right, we look at how the hero society and how it trickles down and how enhancement is everywhere, right? Whether it be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson prepping for Black Adam, whether it be Hugh Jackman almost in his 60s coming out shredded and muscular for a role, right? All of these guys are taking something for that role. Now, I don't want to guess exactly what they're taking, but I can guarantee you something they're taking. You do not go from Dwayne Johnson, spent most of his career as a pro wrestler. Go look at his videos from pro wrestling from the 90s all the way through the 2000s. He was always a big guy. He played professional football.
Yeah, but he was not nearly as shredded.
But he was never, ever that muscular guy. That changed when he got into movie roles, right? He got a good coach. He obviously changed his diet. He works his fucking ass off. And at his age, if he's not on some sort of fucking enhancement, he's stupid. Of course he is.
I'm sure he is.
Right. So is Hugh Jackman. If he's preparing for a role, so is Chris Hemsworth. I don't care who it is. If someone all of a sudden gets jacked for, I have never heard a normal human being, right, over the age of 25, come to me and go, you know what, I changed my diet and increased my protein. I picked up 30 fucking pounds of muscle. Bull fucking shit. That doesn't happen overnight. Right? You can see it on a day-to-day basis. You've obviously enhanced yourself. Now again, that doesn't take the work away. They worked their fucking asses off to look like that, right? But let's be realistic and let's be honest about the process so that everyone knows how this works. Right? There's a process to it. Okay, so again, you're talking about these stars that going thing in the 80s, Arnold Schwarzenegger through his entire bodybuilding career, right? Then you go in, as you said, sports, Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, the MLB steroid era, right? The home run sword. Ben Johnson in the Olympics, right? Carl Lewis, the guy who got the gold but tested positive for ephedrine, right? Performance enhancers, ramped up his heart rate, sharpened his focus. There are so many examples in our society, right, then and now, that shows that it has become ingrained in who we are. And understanding the hero complex of how this works has always been super fascinating to me, right? So I have my own insight on it as a kid growing up and seeing these things. But let's, go ahead.
What, like, baseball obviously is my game, so that's just what I know a lot about the situation. Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, in my opinion, two of the greatest players that have ever played the game, that are blackballed to the Hall of Fame because of their steroid use. And the writers who vote, I think it's so stupid, but the writers who vote for the Hall of Fame are choosing not to vote for these guys to go in because they say they cheated. And to me, like, that's just the most asinine, ridiculous argument on the planet, because at the end of the day, they're saying they cheated because it was technically against the rules, but it kind of wasn't. The majority of the time that they were, Major League Baseball didn't have a rule saying you couldn't use steroids.
Yeah, but
if memory serves me right.
But again, that's the problem, right? Is because, okay, they were using, right? Let's say they were all using. Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, everyone's using, right? Do you think they're the only ones who were using?
No.
Of course not.
Well, there's so many guys in that league.
They were the only ones caught and drilled in front of society to try and tell it. And this leads me into my next point. The society is we have this demonization, right, and glorification all happening at the same fucking time. Ford brings out an ad, right? They show you their brand new Mustang, GT Mustang, right? 5,000 horsepower, V8 supercharged engine, it's everything. Every single time they run it, it's our Mustang on
steroids.
Why? If it's a bad thing, why are you glorifying it? Right? Every type of hero that we look at always has something that turns him into the hero, some external factor that takes him from average Joe into superhero, right? Or to hero of the family, whatever that be, right? All those things tie in. Why are we fascinated with it as a society? Because as a society, when we look at it, we always want to look to those big. It's what we want to be. Men want to be big, strong, fast, right? It's something women look to for protection. Our society looks at people like, goes, wow, that's amazing. But then on the flip side, what happens is we want to start demonizing it. Why do we demonize it? Because you'll have John McCain, right, who was on the Congress panel when he was talking specifically to Mark Maguire. In his mind, he's like, so you mean when I was in high school, if I took steroids, I could be a pro baseball player?
No,
motherfucker, you couldn't be.
No, you couldn't.
Of course you couldn't be. It doesn't work that way. But that's again, right. I don't blame him because the entire thing was a sham. There's no relevant information that was given to people to understand the concept of it.
Right.
It was just demonized and thrown under the bus. And that's part of what we have to overcome as a society. There's always going to be things we're going to do. This is the gray area. I will tell you now, there is not a gym in the United States, and I would go as far as say the entire world, that doesn't contain a large group of people taking something. Now, your thought process would be is you'd walk into a gym and you'd go, I can tell who's on steroids. That muscular guy there, he's on steroids. I can see that, he's a little bit ripped, and because he's ripped, he must be. That's just someone who doesn't understand the process of dieting.
Agreed.
And is also pissed off because someone else has what he doesn't have.
Yep.
Finding the first easiest thing to shit on someone for, to make himself feel better about his inadequacies about his own physique.
Yep.
I've experienced this with people who will jump into that line. Now, here's the reality. If you go into a gym, you'll be surprised of who is on steroids. Mm-hmm. Because it's most of the time that guy may be. But you see that fat guy over there who doesn't control his diet, he's on steroids. You see that girl over there who's overweight, she's on. Someone's doing something that's performance enhancing. Now, whether that performance enhancing is going and getting a script for a Schedule 3 drug and calling it TRT, whether it is going to buy it from a dealer who sells it underground, or whether it's going to your doctor and gives you Ozempic, or whatever, what are you doing? You are using something to enhance your outcome.
My reaction to people that I meet or speak with, specifically men that are at least 40 years of age and older, and when I learn that they're not on TRT or some kind of thing like that, my response is, why not? Well, I mean, honestly, I feel like any man, if you're you should be consulting with your physician or your doctor, get your blood work drawn to see where your testosterone levels are, because it does matter. It makes a difference.
But also in that fair point, let's also be honest, right? Finding a doctor who truly understands the benefits, right?
Yeah, I don't have a conventional. My doctor's actually former military. He's actually fit and in shape.
That helps, right? So the problem is, this is the same as asking your doctor to give you a diet. He hasn't got a fucking clue what you should be eating because he's not a dietitian. It's the least thing they are taught through medical school.
Yeah,
right.
They're not taught.
They're not. Right. They give a baseline.
They're taught how to prescribe medicine.
Yes. So they don't understand what your body actually needs to function. They only understand that they have to prescribe something to you to help with a symptom.
Right.
In the same breath, they don't fully understand what you need in order to be the best version. By all of these studies that we spoke about when it comes to steroid tests, they're all extreme studies.
Right.
It's old people, it's sick people. When you go to the hospital, right, let's say someone's in the hospital and they have AIDS, right, immune deficiency syndrome. What do you think they give them? Steroids. Why?
Probably the growth hormone aspect of it.
No,
I don't know.
They're just getting testosterone. Why? Because it stops muscle wastage. There are so many positive effects from anabolic steroids.
Yeah, the muscle build.
If it helps someone sick in a hospital, if it helps a 40-year-old man with low testosterone, if it can help a 16-year-old kid called Jason, who's a skinny-ass kid who all of a sudden becomes this beast in his mind. By no accounts was I a beast. I've never been fantastic at any sports, right? I just really like strength sports, and I work my ass off. If anybody thinks that I just, I put an injection in my arm and all of a sudden I was fucking big, I work my fucking ass off to get you right. But the point being is, there are certain effects, and we need to understand them in society because more people are on it than you realize.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is you want to give people as much good information. Now, this is, again, we're the layman's lab. In our society, right, we glorify it and we demonize it. Right? Those are two very contradicting things.
Yeah.
So first, you need to understand, if you have a child, right, you've got a young man. He's on a sports team. He's trying to gain muscle. he's trying to achieve something, as all of us as young men do. Right? Sports is that guy where you're trying to achieve. That's that first real thing you grab onto, right? While he's trying to achieve this, his friends are taking steroids. Right? There's some guy at the gym who's offering him steroids. There's someone who's talking about it. Yeah. So do you want to give him the prudent information, or do you want him to do it behind your back? Right? Get it from a dark source. Or do you want to understand the dynamics of why does he think that he needs to take it? Right?
Yeah.
Now, my opinion on this would be, if you're a kid, right, start with good supplementation, good food. Your testosterone levels at that age are really fucking good.
Yeah,
and if you
have any issue.
Bypass and stop feeding your kids shit.
That's right.
Feed them good, wholesome meals. Make sure they get good supplementation. Those spikes that they have from the age of when they mature, usually at around 13, all the way up to 22 is where your base muscle is growing.
So my son, we have fun with this. I mean, like my wife and I, we work out pretty hard, and like he's like obsessed with veins.
Oh yeah.
So he's like always.
He always loves seeing.
He's trying to flex himself. And he's like, "Daddy, look awesome. At my veins." And so last night I was like, "Oh, that's cool, dude." And I went like this and flexed, and he's like, "Whoa, how'd you get that?" Right? Like I was like, "Well, you got to eat your protein, and you got to lift lots of weights." And he's like, "Cool." And I was like, "Is that what you want to do?" And he's like, "Yeah." Right. And he's 6.
And he's 6 because this is you and me were those impressionable kids, right? We saw this, we saw the bigger guy in society, the bigger guy that around them. You can see the respect, and you kind of admire and want to start fluctuating and moving towards that.
Right.
But as parents, right?
Well, I just remember. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
I was just gonna say, like, I coached baseball, a travel baseball team there for a little while, and I remember like a lot of these.
What age groups?
Man, I think if memory serves me, I coached 8 up until high school, senior year of high school, so like 8 to 18, basically.
Very different. They're two very different sports.
Yeah,
the same sport, two very different dynamics of those players, right?
All those kids were like each age level was just completely different, So I had it's a pretty wide range of experience with coaching them all. But what I was like at the young ages, so like 10 to 12 especially. I incorporated a lot of push-ups, sit-ups, and sprint work type work in the things that they did. 2 reasons: the push-ups and sit-ups I would do were in the middle of practice. If they would lose attention or get messed up or something, I'd be like, do 5 push-ups and get back up, so to redirect their attention. What they didn't know, the push-ups and sit-ups that I would do with them like that was building strength.
Yes.
And it was intentional, right? And there was a couple kids that came to my team that were a little overweight, and by the end of the season, they were trimmed down, and now like a couple of these guys like today, they look amazing. Like I'm so proud of what these guys became. Dude. Not that I was the one that had anything to do with that.
Well, you had a part of it.
I introduced them. I had a part of it.
You had a part of it.
Right.
You can't understate that.
But showing them and teaching them that like it's not okay to be lazy, to sit on the sidelines. Like you got to put in the work. You got to put in that muscle building, eating protein, eating well, doing that with my children. Because so many parents, especially today where they're busy, like we heard them this morning in our networking meeting, we have kids going everywhere with sports, and what do they do in that situation? Run through the McDonald's drive-thru and feed them shit. So if you're trying to be this elite athlete, but you're going to McDonald's drive-thru.
Because it's the easiest thing you make that good point, because again, I want to educate parents, right? You cannot get away from it. It's part of our society. It's not going away. Right. My true opinion is after the age of 18, we should start learning to embrace this and give as much education as possible so people can maximize their results and minimize damage.
Well, honestly, let's be real. We both like AI. We've used a lot of AI. You know what I did recently just for shits and grins to see? Because Sam and I were talking about this. You have 0 excuses of following a good meal plan today. Why? Because you can tell AI,
what you want to do.
ChatGPT, Grok, pick your AI tool. Tell them about yourself. I'm a 6'2", 247-pound man with 13% body fat. I want to get down to 8% body fat. I like these foods. Give me a meal plan to allow me
to do it within this time frame.
To do within 6 weeks.
And then you just keep tweaking.
And I kept tweaking. And guess what? It actually gave me a meal plan.
Yes.
Was it the best meal plan? No. But it went pretty well, and if I didn't know anything, it was a good plan for what I would need to do.
Because it's pulling resources from multiple places. Correct. And again, this understanding is we have this vast array of information.
Right.
So back to a parent. If you have a young man, right, and it's generally with the young men, and he wants to be a football star, right, and he's and you have to understand. I know every parent thinks their kid's going to be the next, the next winner of whatever big trophy they want to go in. But realistically, there's first of all genetic factors, right? Yep. Some people are built differently to other people, yep. right? Some people are not built for sports in general. Some people are really athletic. Some people are not athletic. Take everything else away. If you have a child that is not geared towards being the most athletic, but they want to do that, then what you have to do is you have to find every other mechanism to give them the boost that they need. Mm-hmm. Nutrition, the right training, the right positive enforcement, right? Because what's going to happen is if you don't do that, they will start looking for alternatives, and they exist.
Yes, they do.
Right.
Well, my view. Here's my thing on sports, and I'm frustrated a little bit to a certain degree with how parents operate around sports because it's just ridiculous. However, I carry a fundamental belief: if you're going to play these sports, let's make sure to get these kids' life skills out of them.
Yes.
So to me, every sport, regardless of what you play, they require two things for you to be successful in that: a good meal plan and a good training program, whatever that may look like. Well, guess what? Those are life skills.
Yes.
So if you have a good meal plan and you have a good training program to help you improve on your sport, and you apply these things, that is a basic fundamental life skill that you can implement into your child. Give them that resource.
Yes.
I'm not as worried about the, quote, the lessons that you would sign up for with their actual sport. More so, get a good trainer to help them with the weightlifting and the physical training plan and the meal plan, because again, that's that life skill that can translate and keep a long-lasting, healthy life.
On that, there's a flip side to this, right? So you have the general parent, like say you've got multiple levels of how parents conduct themselves. If they're not educated, find someone who is. If you really want your kid to excel in what he's doing, give him every benefit. Find the experts. If you can't find them, go online. They're there, right? But then you have the flip side. I've known at least 4 people who actually gave their children courses of steroids to give them advantage in sport.
Interesting.
Right. And when you think about that, right? So, and when these people didn't know, when I'm saying they gave it to the kids, these are people who had no idea what they were giving their child.
Take this.
Take this. These pills are going to help you, right? You don't know what they do. You don't know what the damage ratio is. In fact, you probably don't know where we got it. You know, it might be some drug dealer who made this stuff in his basement. Like, seriously. Like, I really want to harp on this point, right? Is you have to be cognizant that there are parents out there that are willing to sacrifice their children. We've seen it the last 10 years with transitioning, right? Is there's parents who drive their kids to transition so they can feel like they've achieved something. Look, I'm a good parent because my kid's trans. It's some bullshit, right? It's the same thing on the flip side of the sport. There's parents out there that will sacrifice their children's health so they can live through their child's experience.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right, and we have to be cognizant, and this is why I feel education on this is important. And I'm talking from a perspective is, if your son starts taking steroids as a kid, and you don't know, and I was in this situation, I just said my parents didn't have a fucking clue what was happening. I was just growing, I was just fucking getting big, and I was getting happy. And
he's just eating a lot.
Right, look how good my son's doing, right? But realistically, right, they didn't have a clue. They suspected, as everyone else did, right? There was lots of people who suspected. And as I got older, I honestly don't care because I think it's a good education point.
Yeah.
Right? But realistically my parents didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Yeah.
Right? I was doing my own thing. I found what I needed to do because I had no other. I don't come from a sports family. My parents are wonderful human beings. They are not people of sports. They didn't come watch me compete in sports. They didn't come watch me do what I did. It didn't bother them, and that's fine. But that lack of interest and that lack of driving to see what your child is actually interested in and how they do it, and taking a step away and well, they do what they do, these are the type of things that can happen. Now, I could have just as easily, right? I'm very grateful now, sitting as a man of 45 now, going, I am very happy I took the steroid route because what that did is that made me fitness orientated, that made me diet orientated, that made me go down a path that wasn't alcohol or drugs.
Yeah, good point.
So from a perspective is if you say, and I'll put it in these terms, if I had a son and they said, right, would you rather have him take steroids, would you rather have him drink alcohol and say take steroids all day? Because it's at least down a health path, right? There are a lot of positive effects from this, as much as they could be detrimental based on usage and how it's used. And I wouldn't advocate that any kid use it, but it is a reality that they do.
Well, and to your point, alcohol doesn't help you achieve that goal of health and fitness in the way you want to look, so you're going to stay away from it when you choose to go down the path of steroids and work it out.
You see what I mean? Yeah. So it's very important for especially for parents to understand this. If you are a parent and for whatever reason you find out that your kid has been using gear, right? Don't shit on them.
Yeah.
Take a step back, why. Try and understand why. Look at it from their perspective of why they did this, right? Don't shit on them. Also, they're not just going to die.
No, yeah.
Right, so I want to be very clear. Like, understand the mechanisms. Okay. Sit down with them. Go through. You know what? I've had this discussion with kids. I've had people in my family, young men, who've come to me. Listen, I think I'm doing this. This is what I say. Listen, I didn't when I was a kid. I didn't know any better. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you now. If I could do this over, knowing what I know today, what I would have done is I would have at that age maximized my supplement intakes, my zinc, my magnesiums. I would have boosted my testosterone through the roof. I would have eaten a shit ton of steak. I would have hit that gym twice a day. And I would have driven like that until at least the age of 23. Yeah. And when I get there and I've maximized as much as I can naturally, and I get to a point and go, you know what, this is not enough for me, I want more, then I will look at alternatives as an adult, right? And being in South Africa, steroids wasn't illegal. It's very much like Canada. It's not the same as the United States, right? If I was in Thailand, I can go buy it in a pharmacy. The point being is, as a kid, especially as a young man, your prime testosterone, so your natural steroids, are at their prime between the time that you hit puberty and around the age of 23. So while you're in that time, maximize what you have. Yeah. Be patient. Drive it in. I promise you, from a longevity standpoint, it's going to be way better for you, right? You have to look at it from that standpoint and say, this is my window I have. This is at the point as a young man where I can maximize my natural levels. They're at their highest they're going to be for my entire life. What I need to do is I need to maximize, get used to training, learn how to do everything. When you get to the age of 23, what I wanted to do as a 16-year-old versus to what I wanted to do as a 23-year-old was night and day. It was not the same. My path changed completely.
Yeah, because at that age, every year is a different... it's a milestone is the word I was looking for. Yeah.
So you might be 16, and in your mind you go, I'm going to go. I want to play college ball, and then from college I'm going to get drafted by the NFL. I want to do this. Great, that's great. A lot of those things change as you leave school.
Definitely.
So what you want to do is you want to get to a point, because you can live a very healthy, happy, strong life, maximizing natural testosterone levels in society without taking any steroids.
I want to go back to something. This is really relative to what you're saying. A lot of kids, in my opinion, people don't know what to do after their sport ends. They struggle with that. I struggle with this big, okay? Because your whole life you're wired, at least your young life, you're wired to say, like in my story was baseball, you are going to be the best, you're going to make it, you're going to do this is your goal, this is your dream, this is where you're going to be, and you don't think about it. What happens if you don't do that? In the back of your head, you had a pretty good idea it was very likely because of the numbers and the stats aspect of it, but you would never give it any real credibility because you just couldn't believe that way. Otherwise, you wouldn't be good at what you're doing.
100%.
So what we don't do very well is like prepare these kids for life after sports and what to do. And I think parents get really involved with the dream, if you will.
Yeah.
And they have the bigger dream than the kid does.
Because they're living through the children, which I get to a degree.
Well, and they're also trying to be loving and supporting parents to help that kid achieve the goal and whatever it is they're trying to accomplish. Well, but I think what happens for a lot of kids on the backside of these dreams is like, what do we do now? What's next?
You say a lot. It's most. Let's be realistic. It's the 1% that actually achieve the goals of doing a professional sport professionally, right? And
let me make my point.
Make your point. Sorry, go ahead.
Trying to go to. In my eyes, and you said this yourself, like what I would do different. Like if I could go back in time, if there's athletes listening to this, and I'm sure there is, know that there is a destination after your sport.
Yes.
And so learning these things today, like one of the reasons that I've really embraced training with you is what I've said. I liked doing hard and difficult things.
Yes.
And things that are outside the box. And you and I, and we'll reveal this later on, have a little bit of a game plan of what we want to do to really create some fun, like athlete type things again for us, to where I go, had I discovered like this could have been something I could have done years ago. Who knows what could have been different? Like life has a journey for a reason, so I'm not gonna like look at all of it that way. But my point is, if you learn to find a different way, take the skills and the life skills that you learn in your sport, and then apply them to afterwards to continue to be in the gym, continue to push health and fitness, I think it's going to make a huge difference in your life.
100%.
And it did in me when I finally came back around. One of the reasons I had such a big gap and struggle in my life is because I got away from the gym.
Yeah.
But being able to have that ability to realize while you're in your sport, there's more, and there's going to be an afterlife to your sport. Have a plan for that afterlife is what I'm trying to say.
And you make a good point. And to that, I would say anybody who did anything competitive, everybody I've spoken to, I went through it. I had a good discussion this morning as we were talking to Robbie Donofrio, right?
Yeah.
And he was explaining to me, he's like, you know what, when I was competing and I knew the competition's coming, I could run a diet. I keep in touch. Now that there's no competitions for me,
having a hard time.
I'm having a hard time dialing in. I've got a meeting with him next week, and I'm going to kind of introduce him to the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
But I went through this, right?
Yeah.
You went through this. I remember, there was always either the next strongman competition, powerlifting, bodybuilding, wrestling event, whatever I was doing.
It was our purpose.
It was my purpose, right? So when what had happened is I'd go through a point of time, okay, great, this is be seeing as my point where I'm recovering and I'm trying to pack on muscle or doing whatever I need to do. So, diet kind of goes out the window. I keep it kind of clean, but I don't really check what I'm doing. And then once I have to get dialed in for a competition, great, what's the time frame? I need a year, great, dial in, boom, go do it. There came a point, right, and I'd say this is COVID kind of switched into this, right, because I got a point where, from my perspective, especially when we're talking about bodybuilding, powerlifting, there's a lot of good powerlifters over the age of 50, right, really good, and I have all the respect in the world for them. For me personally, what I see when that happens is I see the risk of injury increase, right. Those guys who do it, I have all the respect in the world for you. Keep doing it. Don't stop what you're doing. Strongman's the same, right? Bodybuilding's the same. There's a point where, I think the oldest ever Mr. Olympic competitor was, I can't remember his name. I think his name was Larry, right? A black guy. He was phenomenal. This was in the 80s, right? And when he competed, he was 53,
really?
Right? I think he came top 3. He's like one of the best ever do. He was the only guy who ever did it, right? And I think now it's almost impossible.
What's the oldest today, I wonder?
Generally, the guys peak in the Olympia at about 43. But I say that's where you kind of hit your peak.
Is it Chris Bumstead's the current Mr. Olympia?
I think he turns 40 next year.
Is he 40?
Right. But he's classic physique. It's a little bit different to the open Olympia, right? Because the amount of muscle you have to carry, how you carry that muscle, it changes. Also, injuries start racking up. Training that way for that long, you start getting injuries, right? The point is, I found a point where I was like, you know what, I don't really want to do these competitions. I don't find a lot of value in bodybuilding competitions. I kind of realized that it wasn't the competition I enjoyed, it was the process of going through that.
Sure.
And I went through a point of depression where I sat down and go, okay, what's next? And I was like, fuck, okay, I'm just going to be a fat fuck the rest of my life. I'll go to the gym, but then, like, what's the point? I literally had this in my head. What's the point? I asked myself this question, like, why am I training? Right, because if up until the age I was 40, everything was purpose-based. There's a competition, there's something I've got to do. There's a competition, there's something I've got to do. Once I made the conscious decision saying, you know what, I'll probably compete in something, but I might not as well.
Yeah.
Then I had to switch my mindset and go, okay, what do I get out of this other than the drive for the contest, the drive for the competition, the drive to go compete? And then I realized how much joy I actually get out of just going to the gym on a daily basis.
Totally.
Hitting it and just enjoying it, and then adding people like you, right, guys that share the passion with me, and going just having a fucking good hour of training.
Like yesterday's workout for me was one of the funnest workouts I like have a lot of fun in our workouts all the time, but like I was like smiling walking out of that workout. It was tough.
It's tough and it's fun, right? So once I switched my mindset on that, diet became easier because now it was no longer about the end outcome. It was living in the moment. It was taking the moment and going, well, you know what, I've done this for, it'll be 30 years next year, right, that I've trained. And I was like, I did this for, a good 35 years, right, or 25 years, and it was good.
Yep.
But now I'm at the point where I just enjoy this shit. And then I realized I love it. There's that Ronnie Coleman clip of him, right? And he's standing in the locker room at the police station. He's busy putting his gear on. Yeah. And he goes, people ask me why I do that, why I do it, and why he still trains like a beast today with all his injuries.
He does.
It's because he loves it. And then it clicked, and when it clicked, it was like, oh God.
Yeah.
Then it didn't matter what else I did.
Well, here's something that I'll share that I think you're talking a lot about this. Daily habits versus results is what we talk a lot about. And because a contest is ultimately a result, right?
Yes.
So whether it's a competition or a contest, a sporting event, whatever it is, it's ultimately a result. We're training for that to be able to go out and perform to our highest level of ability.
Yes.
And so with athletes, when that goes away,
there's nothing left.
There's nothing left. Now what? Well, my life is done. It's over. And I struggled with this too. What was I going to be getting ready for? Well, there's nothing to be motivated to go do that now.
You are every single guy that drove for something athletic that I have ever met.
No, of course. Well, and I guess it took me to understand this, and to tie this into a little bit of life skills and relationship skills. The goal for me is to live a long, healthy, productive life. Do I want to be 100? Not necessarily, but I want to live the way I want to live. But I've seen people that are, whether they're overweight, injured, out of shape, that are just miserable and struggling, hate what they see in the mirror, and they just accept it and deal with it. And I'm like, I don't want to live like that. I like the idea of being able to do physical things, play with my kids, get down, do stuff. Just the other day, as a joke, I think I even told you about this. Sam jokingly was going to run up and jump in my arms as I was standing there. I was like, "Come on!" And she did it. And guess what? I caught her, no problem. Right? And Sam's not late. But the idea is that I could even just do that. It's because we train, and it's more about a daily lifestyle.
Yes.
And getting involved. When I go train, I enjoy it and I have fun with it. So it's something I enjoy and have fun doing.
Yes.
It's my hobby, if you will.
Yeah. And it's something that gives you fulfillment. It's purposeful. And if you look at the different structure between men and women's brains, right? So men's brains are developed in a way with our dopamine hit, that when we hit the gym, we get a way higher dopamine hit than women do.
Yeah.
Way higher, right? We get a way higher hit if we go out into nature. That's why men like going hunting, going on hikes. There's something about that interaction that drives into our primal instinct as men that makes us, it gives us purpose in life.
The guy that's training with us, who hasn't trained in a very long time, that started with us, I should say, this past week, he's told me a couple different times after the workouts that he felt so great about himself as a result of the workouts. Yeah. And he's like, I know, I don't keep up with you guys. I'm like, I don't expect you to do that. It's fine.
Shit. I care about it.
Doesn't matter, and his effort's impeccable. But he felt something that he hasn't felt in a really long time. And the point is, you walk out of that gym feeling accomplished.
Yeah.
Unless you cheated yourself in the gym, and with us, you don't cheat yourself. Well, you can.
You can, but you're not going to come back for the second round.
That's right.
The thing, listen, and we've said this multiple times, and this goes out to everybody in a gym, right? And this is no judgment, whatever. It's to me, it's all about effort. Right?
Yeah.
The guy that's training with us, we're not going to mention him, so we haven't got his permission to mention him on this, but he came in, and when I say he's doing a fraction of the weight, there's points where he doesn't even use weights.
Correct.
Because he's still getting into it. However, he doesn't fucking quit.
Never.
He drives every single rep. He pushes until he literally fails. That amount of effort, that's the shit I love.
Dude, it motivates me watching him do that.
Yes, because it's not about how much weight you lift. I had an interaction with two young boys the other day at the gym, right? I'd guess them maybe 15, 16 years old, right? We were busy doing a chest workout. I was watching them behind me. They went straight into a shoulder press, right? Mm-hmm. And they've got way too heavy weights. Mm. They drive those weights up. And the one kid almost literally tore his shoulder off with the weight that fell back, right? Now, here's the point. I could have laughed at them and walked away, but I was like, no, I'm going to go have a chat.
It's an opportunity.
It's an opportunity. I walked up to them and I said, would you like me to give you some tips? Right? And they said, yes. Okay. When you start your workout, what you guys are doing is you're focusing on weight. So you're trying to see how heavy you can go. That's admirable, but it's going to get you nowhere.
Nope.
Start light. Get your form right. If you're doing a shoulder press, for anyone watching, full extension all the way to the bottom. Touch that dumbbell to your shoulder. Get your full shoulder all the way down. Mm-hmm. Get your arm down so you touch it. Drive all the way up. Get that done. Start with the 10 pounds. And then try 15 pounds. The minute that weight is so heavy that you cannot complete that form effectively, You've now hit your limit. Now what you want to do is now you want to push to failure.
Yeah.
And man, you know what the best feeling was is we walked away and I kept an eye on them and they did exactly what I told them. And they had a good workout because this is what it's about.
That's right.
We're here to help each other.
That's right.
Men need to try and be better to each other.
That's right.
Right. Effort trumps everything. If you think you're going to ever come to people who work their asses off and really want to drive, and you're going to come there and you're not going to put in maximum effort, you're not going to survive.
Yeah.
Right. The definition of a purposeful man is maximum effort in everything they do to define and complete that purpose.
That's right.
That's what makes you feel good. If you want to know what feels great, go and do a workout. I don't care if it's walking, running, skipping. I don't give a fuck what you do. Swim the ocean, right? But you do it and you test yourself and you struggle and your lungs burn and you go through and you overcome that. When you're done, it's like an ice bath. You sit in that thing for 3 minutes. It's a suffer. It's horrible. You sit in that thing for 3 minutes. You're freezing your ass off. When you get out, you go, I did it.
Yep.
It's the accomplishment of testing yourself physically, mentally, in a way that pushes you past certain limits. Well, this is what we drive for.
And it also, when you're doing these things, it allows you to be proud of yourself. I think, there's I experienced this, like, I didn't like what I saw in the mirror.
Yeah.
And the guy that trains with us actually said that to me too. Like, he doesn't like what he sees. And I'm like, that's okay. Use it.
It'll get better.
It'll get better. Each day that you're here, it's only going to get better. And you have to use it. Remember where you were and say never again.
Yes.
Right. And so for me, that goes back to what I've established with him. And I'm working on building a program for our people. But like, the daily habits is the most critical component of this, because you have to use the right energy. In my opinion, if you are relying on motivation to do this, like, the motivation's bullshit.
I'm preaching on that you're 100% correct.
Yeah,
motivation is a short-term solution with no long-term gain.
It's bullshit. The motivation's not, like, the first week you might have some motivation, but the minute shit gets hard.
Yeah.
Like I told you today.
It's the switch between motivation to discipline.
Yeah. Like today, I told you going into the workout, like, my left bicep felt like I did a full bicep workout. We did arms today. By the end of the workout, though, my biceps felt fantastic because I worked around what was going on. Well, my point is even saying, and the undisciplined person, or the person relying on motivation, when they feel that way, they're going to say, I'm sorted, I'm going to take a day off.
Yeah.
We take days off when our body needs it, but the idea is that sometimes you have to push through some pain and nagging injuries, which we both have, and we work around them.
Yeah.
And it's about the discipline to say, I want to live a certain way.
Yes.
And as someone who didn't do that for a long time, like, now that I'm in that lifestyle and I enjoy it and I'm proud of myself, and it allows me to love who I am and who I'm becoming. And that's the key to this, is like, you're not going to get a result in 30 days,
no.
Maybe not even 6 months. Like, it might take you a year to be, like, you'll see some results in 6 months.
But it's also, there's a psychological aspect, right? First of all, first and foremost, forget the results. Go enjoy the workout. Enjoy pushing yourself. Enjoy the sweat. Enjoy it. Once you have the enjoyment, the results will come.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and like, I think too, like, for me, I remember, like, kind of when I was, like, getting back on track, some people would be like, oh, you look skinny. And I'm like, that's not my goal. My goal is not to look skinny. My goal is to be jacked, right? And but I just accepted the compliment and said, hey, thank you, I appreciate it, because there's people that notice it. But as you start to develop your body the way you want it to be, and people are starting to see it, and they start, like, I posted some stories yesterday, and you're getting people in your DMs asking for advice, asking for input. Like, it's obviously working, right? Because in the end, consistency, time,
always,
patience, that compounding results start to happen. Other people want to know what you're doing. Well, there's no secret sauce. It's simple stuff, but you just have to do it.
Well, there's sauce, but it's not a secret, and it doesn't fix everything.
The sauce is an addition.
Yeah, it's not a secret. Everyone knows about it, and it doesn't do. But you make a good point. It's all about what you put in, how you put it in, and it cannot just be physical. It's physical, it's mental, it's spiritual. There's a whole range of things that come between.
Yeah.
And with that said, on a recap, what we're saying is, try and understand the dynamics of, especially if you have a young person in your life. If you, again, and I wouldn't just layer it on people. If your husband wants to go on TRT, right? Because I've heard of people where their husbands go on TRT and the wife freaks out. Go understand why. Like, try and look at it from the perspective of the person. There's a lot of resources available, right? Understand those resources. We've got this podcast. I want education and transparency to be the base of what everyone sees. It's got to be, right? Because that, if you're transparent, right, and everyone knows where you are, and you're giving contextual information so everybody can weigh it up the right way, it's easy to demonize anything.
That's right.
You can demonize anything.
That's right.
But understand, really weigh it up. So I want to leave this with is, my final words on this is understand what it comes from, right? Understand where it comes from, understand the dynamics, know the difference between these things. And in the bigger scheme of things, understand that if you walk into a gym, right, the amount of people that are taking gear is exponential. If they look good on TV, they're on gear. If they look good on the sports field, they're probably on gear.
Yep.
It's a part of our society. Instead of demonizing and then glorifying and then demonizing again, how about we understand it and kind of open up our society to realize why we do these things. We're trying to be the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
And my personal opinion is, tell me what your thoughts is on this, is I think you should use every tool available to be the best version of yourself. Do it legally, do it through the right channels. Don't be stupid.
Totally.
But find every mechanism to be the best version of yourself.
100%. Yeah, and I'm doing the same thing. Like on TRT, I just ordered some other supplements that we can get into that another time. But like, I am totally on board with any tool that's going to help me achieve where I want to go.
Yeah.
And I'm careful and cautious not to say goals on purpose, but like I have a destination that I'm trying to reach.
Yes.
And then if there's options, tools, I know peptides is something we may dive into at a later time, but like there's all kinds of things out there that can help you do it. Do your homework, do your research, like figure out what makes the most sense. Even on meal plans, like do all the things that make the most sense for you.
Yes.
But use those tools, and there's no like I have nothing but respect for guys that are using gear. Like, who cares? Like, at the end of the day,
I've never cared.
I haven't either, and they still have to work really hard at what they do.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any impact on my life whether or not they do it or don't. Why do I want to demonize that? I'm not going to, because they still have to put the work in.
Yeah,
and they still have to do it.
If you are someone who is shitting on someone or pointing at someone and saying, "Oh, this is the only reason," the reason you're doing it is because you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah, you have issues yourself that need to be addressed,
and you need a reason to shit on someone so you feel. It's the same when it's the fall from grace.
Yeah.
You see someone really high up, and then when they fall from grace, you have a little snicker inside you. Don't be that fucking person.
Yeah.
Be a person who's supportive. Look at other people for what they are. We're all the same. We're all working towards goals. 100%. Instead of being don't be the person that pulls down. Be the person that pulls up.
That's right.
Pull people up. Don't pull them down.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And right there, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll leave it right there.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.